This is Ralf. He's a CEO of Smilefish, which has been 2011, since 2011, and I'll just let him tell us more about himself because he knows way more about himself than I do. So, without further ado, Ralf Brockhaus.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Yeah, thanks for inviting me here. Thanks for bringing me here. A couple of weeks ago, actually, Dan Whelan called me. That alone was an honor, right? So I worked with Dan Whelan for a long time and with Untitled Chapter for a while, actually at FileNet and at IBM, and they definitely come with very high reputation, right? So when they call, I answer, right? So that's definitely the case.
If you can speak directly into the microphone.
Is it better? Can you hear me?
Oh.
Oh, then it bounces. Okay, so that's fine. ACM, I mean, I know ACM since I was maybe 20 or something like that, studied computer science in Germany, and I know basically all the, read a lot of publications, and I know it's a good name, right? So I'm in a great neighborhood here. Definitely, when I saw the list, everybody has a PhD here, so I'm a little bit outgunned. So I will definitely not talk about the bits and bytes of computer science, right? So that's an area I really enjoy, I really like, and Dan asked me to see if I could give a talk about how to develop mobile application, what's important about it, where it is going right now, and I can do a lot of that. But I think the more interesting part is probably the business side, right? And that's what I really like. I'm very entrepreneurial, and I would like to share a lot of that part. So that's what this talk will be all about. Yes, I am somewhat smart, right? So I was always smart in primary school, got to a private school, and then got a bachelor's in computer science and in physics, and then came here for a year, and then I got a master's in computer science and a master's in physics. So I say that a little bit joking, ironic, right? So yes, I'm smart. I don't feel like naked in this environment. I like technology. I like to go into the bits and bytes. But I want to talk a little bit of some other aspects of that, right? And so that's what the talk would be all about. So what I want to do first is, what does it mean to start a business, right? I talked with a couple of people already here. So who of you is running a business right now? 1, 2, 3, 4. Who's dreaming of peddling with the idea of starting a business, leaving the day job, maybe doing it? It's quite a few, right? So it's always in the back of the mind, right? It was always in the back of my mind, right? So I want to share a lot of that. What does it take? Some success factors. What does it mean to be very bold? And also sometimes it's not really bad to be somewhat naive. And I will give some examples for that, right? And I definitely stepped into things I didn't know much about. And just here, security, offense, defense, right? So I wrote an application with the MGM in Las Vegas, right? And I was naive enough to believe that I could write a mobile application and connect to their data center. And they were stupid enough to do it, but that's a different story, right? So I want to talk about that, right? And any feedback I can get from that is probably very interesting, right? So and how that comes about, right? So that's one part. Then I want to talk about mobile and social media applications. I want to talk about the development process. I want to get a little bit more technical, but just enough to distinguish what kind of projects are worth it and what kind of projects might not be worth it. And I don't want to limit that at all to mobile development. It's basically for probably all software development and maybe also outside of software development. So I want to go into that, and then moving from mobile to emerging technologies. But then I really want to talk about making mistakes, right? So making mistakes is quite important, as everybody meanwhile knows, right? So we made a lot of them. I make them every day. And by the way, over there's my wife, Yvette, and my daughter, Laura. And my wife is very happy sometimes to point out mistakes I make. Right? We just joking about that this afternoon. So I give her enough ammunition, right? She's never bored. Right? So I want to talk about that, but in the context of business, right? So I think there are also, for what we do, there are two different projects, right? So it might not be fair, but I put them sometimes into the categories. It's like burning money versus real business, right? So somebody took money from an investor, somebody took the inheritance, somebody has a real estate business which is making good money and came to me and said, okay, I would like to create a mobile application, I would like to make passive income later, right? Or these kind of ideas, right? So there are these ideas of maybe we make money, or there's a real business where somebody says we have right now 1 or 2 or 3 million in revenue, we want to move mobile first, we want to apply your knowledge, we want to grow the business. So those are actually the projects with my IBM background and all that where I'm probably a little bit better at. So let's move on, matter of time. So this is a little bit of a different story, but I think that totally applies. And then when Dan asked me to give this talk, then just a few days later, so I follow the Motley Fool. Who of you knows the Motley Fool? Probably quite a bit, right? So and they provide investment advice, but not really advice, right? So they want to educate, enrich, amuse, and if somebody goes afterwards and say, hey, but you told me I should do this, somebody can quickly say like, well, but you listen to the fool, right? So I like their business, right? So I like what they do. I followed them for a while. And what I read there was there's some 5 different kinds of stupid. There was a radio show they had some weeks ago, and when they talked about that, they said number 1 is intelligence creep, right? And so with intelligence creep, what they mean was that like doctors, was an example, right? Doctors are very smart, right? So they go to med school, it takes a long time. To get in, it takes a lot, right? So they need to be smart to go in, and then they need to be smart to go through. And after a while, yes, they pass, they become a doctor. There's a lot of prestige in that, they're smart, they're known to be smart, and they know to be smart. Now when their toilet breaks, they probably don't go and say, hey, I'm smart, I can fix that, right? So they call a plumber. But what is when it comes to investment, or architecture, build a house? Let's stick with investment. Right, so very often they will look at that and say, okay, I can talk to other doctors, I can talk to others in the medical field, I can invest in biotech, and I can grow my money, I can do various things. And I'm smart from the beginning, so maybe I can muddle my way through. And what will happen is they probably will be successful for a while. But this is more about the long term, right? Will they be able to run that for a long term? And what turns out is actually that doctors really underperform in the stock market, right? Because the same thing you do today doesn't work tomorrow. And you cannot outsmart the stock market. You need you need the guts, right? So you need to listen to your instinct, right? To some extent, right? So they underperform in the stock market. Now, the kicker here is the same thing holds true for another profession. That's what we are all, most of us, engineers, right? Engineers, smart engineers underperform in the stock market. There's a lot of research on that, and there are reasons for that. And I thought, oops, now I don't want to scare anybody, but hey, I look at my investments and I say, oh, we are really high right now. I don't know what happens next, right? And so this intelligence creep can actually be somewhat harmful. So why do I talk about that here right now? Well, running a business, if I try to outsmart my clients and run a business, I also have only so and so much luck, right? Sometimes business actually takes a lot of gut feeling. You need to find out who's good, who's not so good. I just said academically, I did very well in school. My younger brother Klaus, he struggled in school, right? My parents or my mom had to help him with homework in primary school, and then went through school. He inherited the family farm, and sure enough, he built that into a huge business, right? So it's now, he has about 3,000 animals, he has about $6 million in revenue a year, just meat, right? So he sells meat for $6 million a year, it's highly profitable. Lots of great things to say about that. But when I talk to him, sometimes about my projects, right? I say, hey, I met this client, or we're doing this project, or this or that, then he would just say like, I don't think it's a good project. Okay, we'll talk about another one another time. I think that's a good project. I think that business is making money. And when I would ask him, why do you think that? He would say, I don't know. But I would explain it more, that wouldn't help. And he would say, no, it's just the way you talk about your client. With this guy, you're confident, and with this guy, you're not confident. And that's enough for me to say, no, and he can't describe it either, right? So as I said, academically is different, but he's running a very, very successful business, and that's a big part of running a business, right? So I think there's a lot to be learned from that. And I take that. My dad was the same, sadly passed away, but similar way. So what does it take to be an entrepreneur? That's the next big story. I'm sure most of you have seen this, meanwhile, somewhere in one or the other form, right? It takes like, hey, you jump off the cliff and you build an airplane on the way down. And I'm guilty in some areas there. So, hey, if you feel you have it in your guts to build a business and to jump, do it, right? Like I did that for a long time, where I did projects at night, and I taught at UCI on the side and all those things, and I had enough opportunities. But to really quit the J job and to move in takes a lot of guts, right? And a friend of mine, he had 6 kids at the time, no savings, had quite a bit of savings, and he had no money, and he just called me one day, Frank Ayers, a couple of you know him. He basically said, hey, I'm quitting my job, and I start a business. So it takes something, right? So just contracting on the side is not running a business. Actually, quitting your job with the idea of running contracts on the side might or might not be a business, right? So the real business, I think, is hire people, pay salaries, pay taxes, go through all the insurance deals, like all the things it takes to build a team, right? So that takes some guts, and that is also extremely rewarding, right? So when I left IBM, my daughter was just 1 year old, and yeah, we rented an office after a while, and we had always a candy jar in the front, and she came over and she took the candies, and I was talking with the client, and she was sitting under the table, right? So Laura will remember that, right? So those things are extremely rewarding, but it takes guts, right? We need to jump. So a couple of success factors, like what does it take? Yeah, my parents run a business. My parents own a farm, but they're in a restaurant, and they were in the wedding business, right? And so when you work in weddings, those are people who are out of their comfort zone, very important thing in their life, a big investment, and they have a dream of how that should be looking like, right? How that event should come place, and sometimes they have crazy ideas, but they are right. And everybody says that often, like, oh, the customer is right, or something like this. But what does that really mean for an engineer? Because intellectually, we try to outread them, right? We try to study what they do. We look at the internet, right? We find out what they do, right? But they are really in that business, right? So they have different experience. They run it from gut feeling and stuff like that. So when we write software for them or provide hardware or whatever, we should take that into account. And I saw a few times where that was not really the case. So I learned some of that on the farm. Right moment is always, right? So when I left IBM in 2011, I was teaching mobile at UCI, and I would put in my grades on a Sunday evening, and on a Monday morning I would get a call. Somebody saying, hey, my boss doesn't know what he's doing, we are offshoring this project to India, we don't give them enough information, they don't know what they're doing, the thing is not coming together. Can you help bringing us back, or can you get involved? We get into agile management, so I teach agile at UCI, and can you help us out, right? We just run mini waterfalls, and so I came in as a consultant, and then was very careful not to offend anybody there, and then we helped in those projects, right? So that's what I did at the time. So the moment was right, but hey, when we talk about data science, machine learning, security, the moment is always right, right? If you write chatbots, if you're into AR, VR right now, and have expertise or get that expertise, the moment is always right. You just need to find something which is hot at that moment, where somebody is willing to pay money. Not just have dreams, but where somebody says, okay, I can apply this and create business value. And that's what I like to do, and that's what we did, right? So teaching at UCI, sorry, I just started about that, definitely a big part of the success. A little bit different from what a lot of my clients think. And I'll talk later about that, but a lot of people think, okay, you teach at UCI, you take the best students out of your class, you have first pick, and they become your developers. And then they ask me next, okay, can I have interns and stuff like that? But that's not really how this works, right? So it works really much more in a way that they come with their projects to me afterwards, like those kind of people, right? So it's not really, working at UCI doesn't mean cheap labor or something like this, right? So actually it's very expensive still, right? People come out of college a year later, like with 65, 75, 90, 120, right? Those are the jumps people want to make in salary, and you need to kind of face that, right? So there is no freebie. So the benefit of UCI is really to stay up to date with technology and write something new all the time. That's the part I enjoy from UCI. Right? So another big thing is, if you decide to leave your company, you lose basically your comfort field. Because suddenly you cannot talk with the same coworkers anymore. And if you talk with your friends about your business, that's very interesting for the first 2 meetings. Hey, how is your business doing? But after 2 meetings, they're bored. They don't want to hear that anymore. Right? You need to find like-minded people. You need to go somewhere where you find them. And so I found this EO organization, entrepreneurs organization, great, right? So we basically, you need to have 250,000 in revenue, then you can start their program, right? So they have something which they call accelerator program. Then you have about 2 years to get to 1 million in revenue. And you have to be the CEO, you have to have employees or on the brink of getting employees, and 250 in revenue to start. And then full EO means basically $1 million in revenue. Right, so that really helped. Octane is an organization. Does anybody know Octane here? Probably a lot of you, right? Yeah, so Octane is another organization which is really helpful here in Orange County, right? So we put some weight on it. And then another thing, so now I get more on the tech side, maybe a little bit, we built our own platform. And that is what we actually sold in the end, right? So in 2016, I didn't sell Smilefish as a business. I had help from an M&A attorney, and she turned that around into an asset purchase. And so I sold our platform, myself for 2 years as a CTO, and my whole team, right? So that's what we sold in the end. So if we would not have built our own platform, that would have been a lot harder. I speed up a little bit. Next slide is just about Smilefish. I don't think I need to talk about that. Again, I'm not trying to advertise Smilefish, and I'm not here to teach mobile development, right? So, but this is what we do. We build really good partnerships, and I think this one phrase here, I don't know if the mouse actually works, we work best actually right now with clients. We have about $1.5 million in revenue, up to 20 million, right? So then they hire their own people, and really we want to be measured on the success of the business. And I give you some examples of that, like why that is good for us. And then the regular partnerships, like UCI, everything we run is on Amazon. Lately we work a lot more with Salesforce. All our analytics and everything is in the Google Cloud. We did some work with IBM Watson, but that's becoming less. This is our client roster. So it's kind of impressive, I know. I'm proud of it, right? So we found very interesting companies. We got a lot of logo power in a relatively short time. But as many of you might know, the big logos here are not necessarily the big revenue drivers, right? It's often the smaller companies, like Heart and Beauty, Hearing Test for Babies, Beacon Healthcare, Tutor Group. Those were the companies where we really made a lot of good money. And Intel, Microsoft, those were basically the same kind of projects, right? So small projects, but hey, helps us to get some recognition. This is the platform we built. So there's one thing I like about mobile, so especially when I teach it at UCI. If you get into mobile development, you cannot write a standalone mobile application, right? You need all the services around. Right? So you need data in the cloud somewhere, you need to build that whole environment. So very quickly you get from one experience to the next, you get into cloud computing, you get into data and more data, you get into integration of APIs. So the right side is actually often bigger than the iPhone and the Android application. You need to have email, push notification, text message services, so we build them at the bottom. You need to integrate with systems, like I talked later a little bit about the room booking system from MGM, which was a very, very interesting project for us. We couldn't do that in our cloud. We couldn't put our stuff into their cloud, so we built a secure bridge in between. You might be able to hack that apart in a second, but we did, right? And it's not up anymore, so I can show it to you, right? So it's good. So we built this platform. You could have done a lot of mobile development with environments like Heroku, right? So Heroku came out of Salesforce, right? Or Firebase from Google, right? So there are various environments which provide a lot of this. But we were able to build our own environment and gear to our own needs, right? So we wrote it in Microsoft.NET, hosted it at Amazon. So now let's talk a little bit about process for mobile. And I don't think it's only for mobile, right? But if you go out and build your own business, become a consultant, or have people come into your business and want to write mobile applications, they most times come somewhere with a story. Right? And I think we were joking about that at that happy hour before. So they come with a story and they kind of say like, hey, I have this idea, which is totally unique and there's nobody else who is doing this. I cannot really tell you what it is because I'm afraid you steal my idea. And those lucky loos, we got quite a few, and you need to get rid of them. So what smart companies do, and there are quite a few of them out there, they write a very, very strict questionnaire, and 2 or 3 pages of basically a website, where you have to fill out answers to this. And if you can't answer this very, very well, then often you don't really have a very good business. And all of the companies, or all of the places I talked to, which were not able to really provide a good story here, it was not a fruitful mobile application, or social media integration, or great website. Right? So these questions somebody needs to really answer before. You can make a lot of mistakes, and I will show these mistakes. Right? So the next thing which happens is, okay, they come in, the ones which you vetted, which have actually the ability to get the application out. You put an NDA together with them, so that they actually feel safe to tell you their story. Then they come and want all these features which their competitors have. That doesn't help, right? You need to narrow it down to an MVP, the mobile application specifically, but many other things as well. You need to really hone in on one business feature, like one feature where somebody has a business, where somebody has a need, somebody downloads that application and gets that done with that application. They get it done 6 or 7 times, then they can recommend that application to somebody else. But that needs to be one feature, not 20 features where you come with a mobile application and kind of a handbook or something like this, right? So they don't go very well together. It needs to be explaining itself. People have an attention span of less than a minute. Right? So they install it. If you get them that far, you need to make them able to use it, right? So we come up with NDA, we come up with a proof of concept, we come up with an MVP, budgets, timelines. Then the next thing is we mock up all the screens, we figure out exactly what the application needs to look like, the flow, the data flow, have the client write a narrative. Because that way, I know that the client will actually also put enough time into the project. Because it doesn't do me good if somebody says, hey, I made 20 million in real estate last year, I can pay you $500,000 for a mobile application, but I have no time to do it. Right? So they need to be able to really commit on the other side as well. Right? And so the same holds for real businesses. Right? So if they have only short attention span in their business to invest in their mobile first strategy, but want to do something else already tomorrow, then I can't be successful either. Right? So I need that commitment on both sides. And those things are all kind of measurements to, do we have that commitment? Are they putting the money together? Will they really put this into production? Because I can only be successful when I have mobile applications or any software out there which is successful. Because those are my references. And if you run a business, those are your references. Right? So let's not talk about me, let's move it the other way. Then comes the standard stuff, right? So we put the data model together, we look at all the third-party integrations, social media integrations, payment system integration, Salesforce integration, whatever the business is about, right? Whatever it integrates with, we put that together. We use the external REST services, we take our own platform, we expand it for what we need for this specific project, and then we decide on the user interface. So you see, the iPhone application itself might not be the most, right? So do we want iPhone, do we want Android? Is it a hybrid application, budget, project, all of that needs to fit together correctly? Once you answer this kind of question, then comes the full design, and then a full-blown agile implementation. So now that's all good, but if you run a business, there's some difficulties. One difficulty is all that stuff which I wrote here takes a long time. And if you now get a client to commit to your project, you start to invest time and you have meetings and they're ready to write a check maybe. So you say like, well, do I really want to take your check and write the application? Probably yes, right? Because you also need to pay salaries. And so then, like, I can really say like every single item in here, which you neglect, or which we neglected, is biting us in the future somewhere, right? And so honestly, this is the first time I give this talk here. I never put the presentation together like this. It's more like usually it's more like on the sales side rather than on the self-critical side. But let's share it this way, right? So let's look at some of the applications in detail and see what that actually really means. And hopefully that is helpful to somebody who is at the brink of saying, I want to develop my own application. Or maybe some people who are in sales and can provide me with all kinds of support. Because for me, it's relatively easy to hire an engineer, but very hard to hire a business developer. I noticed that over the last years, right? So kind of a business developer is very hard to find. So first thing which came across through coincidence is this Monte Carlo application. So we wrote an application, a hotel, basically a room booking system and all the shows and all the restaurants and all the amenities and the map and everything Monte Carlo can offer in Las Vegas, right? And the idea of we need an application which connects us with the millennials. That was their problem at the time. And so they spent about $2.5–3 million with an agency in Los Angeles, David and Goliath. And they did the TV commercial, and they did the print and all that. Right? And so David and Goliath then said, okay, we've spent so much money to move from print into digital. Now we do all these killer websites and everything, and now mobile came up at the time. And now we do all this again. So they found my name coincidentally at UCI. And I said, oh great, I meet them. Then I showed them all the things I can do on mobile, and social media integration, and cloud, and And oh yeah, we can put AR, VR, like we had some stuff at the time already in there. So we can put all these pieces together. And I thought, okay, they would pick from that. They said, okay, great, we want it all. And I just jumped off that cliff, like I just said, and said, fine. I did not know how to price it. So I called some buddies, and I just said, okay, fine, $250,000. I could have said 400 or 100, what do I know, right? So we came up with 250K. We basically said, hey, 2 salaries for a year on the shoestring, so to speak, bring it a little bit down here, and we do it. They said, how long does it take? I said, well, the first version you have in 6 months, full production in a year. They said, that's too long. So we negotiated down to 9 months. What do I know how long it would take? Right? So that's the guts, right? That's a jumping off that cliff, right? So then the good things happened, right? So I found the right resources. I found another teacher at UCI. I found Frank Ayers, one of my best friends. Alan knows him, right? He's one of the best coders we have, right? So he came in. He had started his business, like I just said, and that business didn't work out. So he came into Smilefish. He helped me, and then we wrote that application together. And sure enough, we showed them the first version, and then we went to the data center of MGM, and they said, no way. I mean, we're not letting Smilefish, who comes out of nowhere, to deploy a mobile application with a connection to our data center and do the room booking. And the David and Goliath, they were so crazy, they wanted to get us on their loyalty program. So technically, you can right away see which governor spent $1 million last weekend. Right? So sure, they wouldn't let us work with that kind of data. Right? So their loyalty program was totally off limits. Nobody outside of MGM sees any of that, right? So great, for us we needed to find a solution. And that was where this actually really came to work. Because what we did is we said we move our solution into the Amazon cloud. We connect the IP address to IP address. They were responsible to securing the channel between the 2 IP addresses. That was the only way how something could go to MGM. And our room booking system started to work. But that took 3 months, and during these 3 months, MGM always apologized to us, or Monte Carlo, right? Yeah, sorry, it takes another, we're waiting for the signatures, and we need another signature. And here I am sitting and saying, like, well, the application's not ready anyway, right? I said, yeah, okay. So by the time they were ready, we were finally also ready. So that's pure luck, right? And you need that, and you need maybe to be that naive, because if I would have worried about all that, I would never have slept. Right? And imagine you get into a legal fight with MGM. That's not, and these guys can't even help anymore. MGM really, or can help probably. I didn't want to offend anybody here, but yeah, MGM is probably pretty tight, right? So again, so we learned our things, so I need to speed up. So most important thing what I learned here is, great, so we did all this pain and we developed that mobile application. Everything worked out, right? So they had actually $300,000 revenue on that mobile application per month. They were very happy with it. Everybody was happy. I think there seem to be 2 experts over there, right? Oh. So the reality is a lot of that money was on their mobile website, which we also did, right? But we connected everything back to the mobile application, right? So it worked out for everybody, right? So it was great, right? What I did wrong is, in retrospect, right? So the yellow boxes here, I just put them in there. I should have just hired a product manager, a sales guy, and built this application in 2012-13 for every single hotel you can find in the world. This in itself is a huge business, hospitality. But we had committed already to the next project and stuff like this, so I moved on, right? And so we are also afraid about the intellectual property protection. I think if I would have met these guys or somebody else for a couple of hours, $1,000, I would have said, can I write mobile applications for somebody else in that space under these contracts? They would probably have said, yes, go for it. Right? So sometimes you need to spend that money. And I was maybe stingy on the wrong side or something like this, or afraid on the wrong side. So here, build your vertical, get a PM on it, get a team on it, and move on. I could have technically moved on with UCI and all the things I do, run this as a business itself, right? So that was one big mistake. Obviously, in retrospect, this whole mistake with the POC and MVP, we didn't do that. So we just jumped with everything in right away. That could have killed us right away, right? So which it didn't. And then we needed to focus on reoccurring revenue. So now they had $300,000 in revenue on that application a month. Then I looked, oops, they got the deal very, very cheap. We got maybe 10, 15,000 a month, 10,000 a month, right? So as a retainer on ongoing updates and stuff like that. So we could have structured the deal in retrospect very differently. I don't know if they would have done it then, right? So you always don't know, right? But these things are things which I, at that time, did not know, right? I did not even know what to look for. And even people told me 3 or 4 times, why don't you just write hotel applications? I always found a reason for not doing that. Right? So it's a mistake, right? A rookie mistake in business. But hey, we survived, we did well. Next thing, so I don't want to talk about everything so long. I'll be careful of time. So next thing, Vista Metal, they do custom alloys. They had a project going with Cisco, where they have this huge bone site in Bonn, yeah, it's like multiple soccer fields full of aluminum and different alloys and stuff. And they needed an inventory tracking solution. And Cisco tried something with RFID and all that. But all that couldn't work because these long 20, 40 feet alloy rods, they're antennas, right? So that whole thing didn't work. And so I had this guy in my class, and he called on Monday morning, and you get the point, right, where that was difficult, right? And so we just said, hey, we need to think out of the box. And so he came up, he said, I found this printer on the internet. It prints these labels, and it has like a protection sheet on the back, and you can just stick these labels on the alloy. To be able to transport it, it needs to cool off to a certain level anyway. Right? I said, hey, great. So you put everywhere a printer, you put the labels with the barcode, we do a great barcode application, stuff goes on the forklift, it goes on the boneyard somewhere, and you take the precise position, and put that into the mobile application, and you're done. And so that project was great. I don't think we did anything really wrong in this case. One thing which we systematically did wrong was we often worked with the CTO. We often did not get the CEO into a room. And sometimes that would have been different. Right? So in this case, we did a killer solution for the CTO. He paid us very well out of his budget. He said, oh, you don't want to see the guy. You just want to take, like, we pay you out of our budget, you write the solution here. And so I was not able to really, like as a business developer, somebody would have gone in through all the different doors into that company and find out what other processes can I optimize for you? What else can I solve for you? And then create a real bunch of reoccurring revenue. We didn't do that, right? We got our maintenance, our regular iPhone, Android updates, and that was it. So, but it was good, it worked out. It's a 250K project also. So those were both like business projects. This other one here is like what I can understand as a burn project. So in this case is like one of the early investors of Fitbit. I did not know that in the beginning, but he was an early investor in Fitbit, and he took money which he gave to Tia Hart, which was her protege. Like she went in Boulder to the university. She was Asian active female engineer, right? So went to an MBA program, and she was chosen as a person to run a business, right? So she had basically a mentor and somebody who financed her. And so her idea was, again, a little bit out there from a technical side, and there's the technical people here. So she came with this idea that you would do the camera on the phone, facial recognition, and then find pigmentation and skin tone, and how skin is shiny or not shiny, or so there's about 8 or 9 different factors, and then recommend cosmetic products based on that. And Sephora, so I think one of the competitors, they had an application out there, all that. So she found 2 or 3 high-flying software companies who knew everything about camera and everything about face recognition, and they couldn't cut it, they couldn't build it, it didn't work. I said, oh, strange. So then she was recommended through a former student of mine who runs his own business now, and we met with her, and we met with somebody else who does cosmetics for weddings, right? So, and works with some of the movie stars. And she said right away that is impossible, because cosmetics don't work that way. Cosmetics work in a way that it's the way how you apply it, and how you work with the person who actually gets, I would say paint, but that's wrong, right? So, so it was not possible. And so we flew to Boulder, and we told them, right? So this does not work. This is why it doesn't work. So she kind of teared up a little bit, because her project was toast at that moment. And then we said, what we can do is we can build another flow, right? So we drew it there. We didn't come with that idea. We came with the idea there, and we built a flow by which the user gets involved herself or himself into that process of picking the cosmetics. And sure enough, that worked. She talked with her investor, everybody happy, and we built that application. Successful, nice projects. Nothing really which we could get out of it, but the big important points here were maybe, hey, if you have a project like this, you really need to understand the stakeholder, right? So Tia, she was the lady in this case who really needed to shine. We need to make her shine. The investor didn't want to waste this money, which was waste money for him anyway, but he wanted this project to really work. And so we came in and we tried to bring this into production. And here comes Ralf, and Ralf's always eager and pushes and pushes. No, shut up, right? There was, in this moment, it is important to really read the client and to, hey, she fulfilled her mission, right? The guy from Fitbit, he never wanted her to bring this into production, that Sephora and others can do. He wanted to take her as up the ladder in his companies, right? And I wanted him to give me other projects. So you need to work that field, right? So there's no right or wrong answer, but I think we made a lot of mistakes, or at least we wasted a lot of time, right? This time I could have put on other projects. Another one, hearing test for babies. So this kind of goes on and on. So we wrote an application for hearing tests for babies. They had about $3 million in revenue. They had people at 50 different hospitals, 50 people traveling to all the hospitals doing a hearing test when the baby is born. And we automated the heck out of it. Right, so we really automated it. We got them to 6 million in revenue. They reduced from 60 to 40 people for other reasons. And they were very happy with us. We got a great retainer. Like, those are the businesses which I'm looking for. It's a dream business, right? So yes, we really bent over backwards to do what they needed. And there was a lot of weird stuff to bring the data to the state of California and all that. But once that was done, we wanted to take the glory home, right? So what I recommend here is, again, we work with the CTO. My recommendation is, hey, we had this book there from Carl Kessler at IBM. I don't even remember it, Alan. It's about all the stakeholders, right? The C-level stakeholders and stuff, right? But in the end, it's right? So you need the CEO somewhat, right? To bring your project into something wider. And product managers, salespeople know that. We engineer, or at least I as an engineer didn't know that, right? So again, lots of work, get a project done. Then as an engineer, we celebrate because the solution is working. That's where a product manager would just start to build a vertical and say, hey, this is what we can do. We even didn't get quotes at the time when the business was doing really well and when we helped them also out of a pickle. Later, when everything worked fine, the CEO didn't want to have a quote out there. Right? You need to do that when you're hot, right? So when you help them, ask for that referral, ask for that quote at that moment, right? So good thing there. Beacon Healthcare is another healthcare project. This is the project I think where we did everything right. Everything worked out really well. There's still a client, but the one thing which I learned there is, if I tell a business owner I teach at UCI and I have great students in my class, afterwards it's like when you see this cartoon with the dog, the owner, and then the owner talks and the dog sings that wah 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 wah, right? It's the same thing. You talk with the person. The only thing that goes on, and then they ask, so can you get me some cheap interns? Right? All this technology thing doesn't really resonate anymore, right? So after that story. So I need to make really clear that UCI and students and all this is not about cheap labor and free interns. It's really about having access to their knowledge, right? It's able to work. We're not talking about millennials anymore. This is like way post-millennials now, right? So they actually really know how to use the devices, how to bring them into their world. They're the ones who jump on AR, VR, and all those things very, very fast, right? That's the benefit of working with the university. Cheap labor, free interns, all a waste of time. And I think that is something I want to always make clear and also be honest to students about that. The next one's, I will do one more and I will skip the next one. Here's another one where engineers often fail, where I failed also. So there's this company, Esther. They developed an iPad application which replaced the $40,000 equipment which was to monitor heart rate for a pregnant woman, right? So for the mother and the baby at the same time. And then, so they could monitor the heart rate of the mother and the baby. So if the mother, a pregnant woman, goes into to the doctor, they can determine if it's a false alarm. But you cannot just determine if it's a false alarm, you need to do that legally also sound. Because what is if you make a mistake? Right? And so they had all the technology and all the patents and all the ways to make that legally sound. So great product. They did another one to detect heart rate, to reduce heart attacks in hospitals, right? So made a lot of money, all great. They only had one problem. So it worked on iPhone and Android, but a lot of hospitals had contracts with Microsoft, right? And so they fought all the time. They said, no, we don't let you in, back and forth. So through coincidence, through Church in Corona, I was connected with them. And so then we did a project with Microsoft and Intel to put a concept together for a mobile application on a Microsoft operating system on an Intel device. And that worked, actually. So that concept worked. None of my developers even wanted to really jump on it. They all said, oh, we are busy with this Apple, with this Android project. So I did that project in the evenings and weekends. So that's how, so why not turn that around? So I got 40, 50K to do that concept over a couple of weekends and evenings, and I still didn't see the opportunity. Yes, I went to Microsoft, I went through them, I talked to one person and he said, here are these projects which we all need to migrate. But they were all boring projects, somebody had already failed in and stuff like that, and then I moved on with my other projects. But so while I go to San Francisco and talk to Apple and Google, and while we try to build a better relationship with Apple so that they actually approve our applications faster and all those things, if I had to see and talk to Microsoft, they would have opened the door right away. Right? So you need to know that. So where are the partnerships you need to work with? Right? So partnerships are very, very important. You can get a lot out of them. And so, again, we made some mistakes there. Not the end of the world, and maybe not the interesting projects anyway. And yes, Microsoft did change their strategy 3 or 4 times anyway. But that's fine, right? So now Microsoft is on the top of the hill again, with all their machine learning capabilities which they brought in, and LinkedIn and everything, right, and the terrific data they have. But at that time, nobody wanted to look at Microsoft Mobile, right? So another wasted opportunity. So I just skip a few. So this one might be still very interesting, because now let's get away from the total business projects and lost opportunities. I mean, first of all, we did also a lot of things right. Right, and then we sold the company, our house, and Newport is paid, university for my daughter is taken care of. All these things are fine, right? So we did a lot of really good things, right? So I don't want to be overly humble. But yes, there's a lot of little things you missed, right? So here, this is a great one to look a little bit out of the box. Right? Everybody says, okay, we need to write an iPhone and an Android application with all these features. I talked to the Irvine company. They kind of stuck me in the right direction there. So they said, no, we don't want a mobile application. What we want is, can you hear me? So what they actually really wanted was no application. Right? No UI is the new UI. That kind of idea. So we developed something where you can go and do a search on Google. You can find a restaurant. It will pop up a map inside a mobile application. There's a couple of tricks I'm not allowed to talk about anymore, but afterwards you can actually track the geolocation. And these tricks change every year and whatnot. So now you track the geolocation, you can pop up a window, and you can say, hey, do you want driving directions? If you say, oh no, I want to go to this and this store and this mall, I know where the mall is, I don't want driving directions. Do you want a coupon? Maybe you say yes, maybe no. If you say yes, the coupon gets placed in the Apple Wallet, right, the Google Apple Wallets. Now if you do that, the coupon has geo-tracking in it, right? The coupon already knows, okay, I can get hot at the geo-fences and these locations, up to 50 locations. That might have changed by now, right? So if somebody, it might be a little bit different now, but like say 2 years ago it was at that point, for sure, the last year still. So this is a way to get actually geo-tracking going and make it useful, right? Okay, we offer you the direction, we give you a coupon, now when you go to the geofence of the vicinity of where you want to go, we pop up another message, right? Do you want now driving directions? Yes, you want to go to this store, but on which side of the mall do you know? No? So do you want final parking directions so that you know on which side of the mall to park? It's another geo-tracking, right? So then you're in the mall, you get this whole problem where people get distracted, they go for dinner or something like this, they still don't buy the tennis racket. And I try to force myself right now not to name any of these brands, right? Because I don't want to get in trouble. But so that's the idea of this kind of application. Right? So you have actually a minimum of a small application in there on the phone. You provide really useful services. It's not just spamming or something. It's something the person was actually looking for. And you drive them to the direction where they want to be in the end. Might give them even a discount. So I don't think there's any shame in digital marketing. But all this can work basically with operating system. And there's a lot of these applications out there. And opportunities, lots of business opportunities. Because everybody still talks about the dying brick and mortar and everything goes online. So somebody needs to fight that or wants to fight that naturally in the other direction. And this is the fight in the other direction. Right? So great opportunities, we did a few of them. That's also where I sold in the end our technology. I said, okay, now is the time. Because our framework, I want to say that a little bit humble also again, like our framework was getting bigger and bigger. And the free frameworks were starting to come up from other sites. And in India and China, they wrote all kinds of fully templated applications. So I said, hey, now is time to cash in and to do the next thing. And that's how this came together. Right? So then I said, think different, think new. Right? So then we looked at this whole line of where does mobile go in the end. Right? And so yes, it started with punch cards, and then the keyboard came in, you could work on your desk, and then the PC came, and then the laptops came, that's all fine. But now touch came, right? So with the iPad and the iPhone, everybody moved to touch. Right? So paradigm shift, really cool applications, lots of stuff, right? So now you brought your mobile application, now the chatbots came. Because when I do payroll for my business, I don't want to go on the phone and call the payroll company with a problem and wait 20 minutes in line, right? So it's a different kind of a mobile application, right? So I bring up the chatbot, and the chatbot comes on and tells me, okay, what is your EIN, like the number of your business, which employee, what's the social security last 4 digits, and then we engage, right? So then it's like, okay, and this is how you reconfigure this and your payroll is working fine. No waiting on the phone, all this stuff. So there's a real business need for chatbots. Last 3 years, everybody wrote chatbots. Everybody went in that direction. When you write chatbots, which is not so hard, right? So you write it basically, the easiest one is probably through a Facebook Messenger. So now you have a deep social media integration with Facebook Messenger. From there you go to voice, right? Laura, when I say, what was the other day, so-and-so store, no, they're probably closed. Then she said, Alexa, when do they close? 6:30. She said, no, they're still open. Right? So that was a couple of months ago. Right? So kids grow up that way. They know voice, like Alexa, they know ambient computing. Like you sit in your car and you can ask your car all the things. Not only like how many more miles, you might even ask your car like, who should I vote for at the next election? And just see like what kind of stuff comes up, right? So there's really interesting, funny conversations, right? So that is going in a lot of directions. Then ambient computing goes in augmented reality. So that's what I work with my students, right? So where I say, okay, this is one direction to take this. It's not the direction I want to go anymore. I have other ideas now. But so then, if you think even one step bigger, the next big step is basically look at all the emerging technologies. Don't go into mobile or something which becomes commoditized after a while. Like start, kind of be light-footed and move on, right? So we moved from mobile, we did an Alexa application, we did a couple of chatbots, right? We did a lot of, like, quite a few things in machine learning, so we did automatic review response at this company which acquired our technology. Blockchain to integrate that into your environment. So there's so many things, right? All the stuff which I just saw here from on the slides of the previous meetings, right? So that's all the core technology. Great, right? Great knowledge. Lots of stuff to study. But maybe also great opportunity to bring that actually into a business scenario. That's what I like meanwhile, right? And do that light-footed, right? Don't go so deep into something, right? So that's, and then have people who go deep into it. So that's my recommendation there. Running out of time, so the last two things I want to talk about is, there's left 2-3 minutes? Oh, nobody says no, I go. Okay, so if you read there, the partners, they know from the beginning, right? Hey, build a business with M&A in mind, right? So, and everybody says that, and there's so many books about that, and so many talks about that everywhere. But when you do that, it still is very different, right? So, with FileNet, right, when IBM acquired FileNet, I did globalization, Alan did a lot of core technology, I think we were both in that acquisition team, right? And so we did all the blueprints, right? So look at all our technology and look at all the things which needed to be figured out so that IBM could acquire the company. After blueprints came blue wash, right? So then now make all the products IBM products. So there's a lot of little stuff, right? So I had some of that in mind, and that was helpful. And then through EO, I went through a couple of nice other acquisitions, like Michael Cato sold a restaurant on the run for 60 million to Grubhub. So I learned a lot from him. You might know Michael, I don't know. Or you might, yeah, okay. So he's a great guy, great resource. You need these mentors, right? So he came, he gave me some tips and stuff like this. But every single contract with every single employee, every single contract with every single customer. So if you create contracts with your customers, that's value, right? If you have reoccurring revenue, that's a lot of value. So now you need to be able to move these customers into the company which acquires you without losing too many. You need to build it in a way that that's actually easy. Every employee, the same thing. Sure, you can give everybody 5% of your company and they will stay, right? But that's not going to work for you, right? So we needed to find a way, 10%, so to speak, to the 10 best people. That's fine. You need to structure that. There's a lot of tricks and a lot of things around that. But yes, otherwise, during that acquisition, that's what the company is afraid of, that they need to pay a lot of money to hold the people for 1 year. Right? So you need to plan for that, right? So every image, every video, every single piece of IP, you need to be sure about that, right? So, and we had a lot of stuff from various clients in our thing, which we maybe you may not own. So we made a lot of mistakes there, but we had to straighten out a lot of things. So don't do it alone. One great thing, so I had this deal and we had this multiple where we said, okay, this is what our company now is worth to the company who wanted to acquire us. And everybody thinks, okay, we had 1.5 million in revenue and we're a tech company, maybe it's a multiple of 3, 5, all these kind of things, right? So we figured out a good number. But then one evening at 10 o'clock, my attorney called and he said, Ralf, you don't have necessarily the best deal there. And I give you to a real M&A attorney who can really help you. And so she came in and she looked at the contract and the first thing she said, oh, technically, for the next 3 years, you need to worry that they come, if you have any IP protection problem in there, any patent, they can come for $3.5 million to you. So you need to get rid of that first, right? Leave this on the table, move this away. Then she said, okay, you get so and so much cash, but then you have so and so much earnout over the next 3 years. And she looked at me and she said, you will not be happy. They will clip your wings. And you will after a while say you want your wings back, right? And so you will not be happy in an environment. You will not stay there 3 years. She predicted that. Michael Cato said the same thing, right? So he had a similar deal at a much larger scale though. Right, so you need to be aware of that, so she helped me with that. And then we came up with an idea which was kind of interesting because she said, okay, why can't we structure it in a way that you make an asset sale, sell your Smile Beacon technology, sell yourself for 3 years, and sell all your team to them. And you can't hire them back for 3 years afterwards. Then we structure it this way. Now we went to them and said, okay, we want to change here the thing with the with all our liability, and we brought it down to 100,000. And then they said, yeah, but then we don't want that other liability. Then we make an asset purchase. And then we said, like, maybe that's a good idea. So it was really weird. So they made that suggestion. And so we said, fine. And then I paid her $20,000 for that 2 days, or 3 days or something like that. And it was really worth it. Right? So don't do it alone. That's kind of what everybody says. You don't need to pay like a huge portion every single time or something that needs to fit to your business, right? But that really, really helped me. And for the next 3 years or 2 years, I didn't need to look over my shoulder. And I was for about 2 months with that company when they got sued on something, which was not on the mobile side, but just on the website, but would have been very similar on the on the mobile side as well. So that's really, really helpful. Plan your next move, right? So it's probably the last thing here. What's that name? Postpartum depression or something like this? So when you get your baby, right? There's the same thing actually, like when you sell a company, you go like, woohoo, but that lasts just 5 minutes, right? That goes great. And then you go, okay, then you go to work, and they did everything to make it really nice because they didn't want to lose any people. But yeah, then you walk into the CEO's office and come like, I want to do this, and then, oh shoot, need to go in like this, right? So the values go down. You cannot decide any more certain things, and they have only certain attention span for what you want to do. And that's no fun, right? To be at 6 o'clock on the phone with the Ukraine again and all these kind of things, that's no fun, right? So there's a lot of things where you say, no, I would like to shorten the circle, right, to make sure that you can do that. So she said right away to me, plan for that. Don't even think that you will be there 3 years. Like after 1 year, you want to be able to part, then you do the 2nd year, and then, yes, I left the day when the 2nd year was over, 4th of July, out of there again, right? And I hired the first guy on the way home. That was something I was only borderline able to do. But so the way how you need to do that is you need to make sure in the contract that it's very clear, like where you have an NDA, where you have cool off on any of their clients, who their clients are, whom you can talk to, leave the website behind. So when you look, Smilefish is still the same website. Like by mid-October, we want to have another website up. We have all the structure, everything ready. But there's certain things you can do and certain things you can't do. And I'm extra cautious because I think, hey, why create smoke? They will assume fire, right? So I don't even put anything there. We have enough clients through the network right now. We got 2 actually really good clients who actually pay for a new development, and I was able to hire the first guy who actually worked there. Because what you can do, if they apply to a position which is on your website, nobody can stop that. Right? I just can't go out and pick anybody. Right? Those are the things you need to be aware of, and then you can build your network and do the next thing again. And that's also why I'm here. But I can also say, so this is the next thing, right? So Smilefish will be machine learning and data science. We know that. And again, I don't want to make this a Smilefish pitch, so I will be fair about that. But that's what we are doing. Right now, I'm really looking after companies who have a lot of data, who have a lot of need for data, either from publicly available sources or proprietary data. Take that in through data streaming, and then sell the data or use it for other things. And then there's machine learning in between, which we don't do ourselves right now. Right? So there's some partners which we assume we work who have that technology, but they don't have the business reach. So we provide the business reach, they provide that part of the technology. So we partner up on that. And you will see more on the website maybe in 2 months there. Right? So what we do right now, really technically, is we're in the leads business. I didn't want, like, we wrote a mass application first last year, and then we got through coincidence in the leads business. We have about 25 million leads, so it's actionable business data in our system, which belongs to one of our clients. We have part of his revenue, it's all kind of sorted out, and every day we generate more data. Right? So it comes in through these channels, we secure it, we bring it out, so that's what we are doing next. And mobile is just a part of that. I think that's kind of about time. Because there's more, but then, no. Any questions? Anything?
Well, let's thank our speakers first before
you.
I'd like to present you with this fabulous certificate.
Hey, thank you. That's nice.
Thank you very much.
I like it because this is like, I was not kidding when I said I knew from the beginning it's a nice organization. So I will show you all.
No, we don't need to change slides. I just want to say the question mark is exactly right. We did not get any questions through the Slack channel or through Inc. So the floor is now open to Windsor for his IEEE.
So, show of hands, how many of you belong to IEEE, any chapter, any sub-organization?
I hope I can answer some of them. Any questions? Anything I... Yeah.
involved in the formation of the team, because you of course have to have you,
Yeah,
the executive, or
Yeah.
the management, and of course the developers. How did you go about developing, finding the team, growing it, making it work?
okay, so I like that question. I think it was acoustic. If I can hear it, everybody was able to hear it and understand it. So, I don't know if I have the right slide. Maybe here's the right location, right? So I said I was very extremely bold about it, right? So I was able to hands-on code iOS to a good extent, right? I was able to write all the services and deploy them into the Amazon cloud, hands-on. I wrote only very beginning Android applications, and I didn't have an Android developer, and yet I signed the contract, right? So yes, you need to find these resources, right? So I systematically looked then through web and everything for an Android developer. It was very hard to find. So I found another instructor at UCI who would help me for a couple of months until I really identified people at the career fair. So for me, first access is friends I have. So then there's Frank Ayers, a friend who wrote a lot of other mobile applications for iOS. I hired him as my CTO, and he was really good at that. He was good at server. He's really a person who is my technical backbone. So we could have been like a great example for CEO, CTO, only that he had 6 kids and meanwhile he has 10, so he has a lot of distractions, right? But he is a great, great person. So you need that, or you need somebody who you can really, really trust. And then we went to the career fairs and we set up shop there, and we went through this whole network of iOS and Android classes which we taught, and from there we found people. Now I don't teach at UCI Academic, I teach at UCI Extension. So most of the people in my classes, they work already for other companies. Right? And so that was how I built out that network. Now I had budget, now I could hire them. So that was that first round. So to imminently kind of fill. Then my next round was really career fair at UCI. Right? So we got our name out there, we are well known there. And last year in the fall, for example, we run speed interviews 2 days in a row. So they have basically the math kind of, the science kind of career fair, and then the general career fair the next day. And we interview about 150 people. When these resumes come in, you can't remember who is who afterwards. So there are a lot of little tricks. Like I take the phone, I take a picture, I show them the picture, I say, look, it's a blurry picture, I'm not putting this picture on the internet, I just need to remember who you are when we later look. So they are fine with that, right? So we take some pictures of the people, we get the resumes, I'm friendly to everybody. Lots of people don't have work permits in the US, so we have to figure that one out. And then I write DT on it. So if I write DT, that's for Dream Team. I put that under the table, or I write 2+. That's a person who has usually like an iPhone, an Android, or some other application out there. I really look for people who wrote an application. Doesn't have to be an iPhone, Android application. It can be a web application. It can be an Arduino device. It doesn't matter. It needs to be somebody who says, okay, I wrote a real thing, end to end, and I made it some form of a product and it's now being used, right? So that is definitely Dream Team, right? If somebody says, hey, I wrote this iPhone application with a friend and we are tracking here the results of our soccer club or something, hey, was it approved by Apple and Google? Yeah, by Apple, yes, by Google, we could do it. Can you do it over the weekend? Yeah, okay, let's see on Monday. Right? So how quickly can you get it approved, right? So if they can get it approved and into both app stores, they're very different from somebody who starts to learn basic coding when they go to the university. It's people who coded as teenagers, right? Those are the people on the one side for that development. So that's only half of the answer though. The other half of the answer is, how do I find a business developer? You teach me. I'm now better at it, right? So better than before, but that was my problem, right? So I hired a few times and I paid money for people, and I hired a guy who was actually really good, and he got everybody on the phone, and he had an accent. He came from India though, right? Nothing against that, it's all great. But my clients right away thought, okay, so you have offshore pricing. No. So as much as I like Sharat, and really he did great things for us, but that did not work, right? So you need somebody who has a network already, right? So that's what I'm now doing different. Right? So we wrote this leads application, and the next thing is email and texting and all these capabilities, right? And then retargeting, and I have a business developer who did that for the last few years and just moved to Florida because he ran out of money over here. So when we have enough, I will give him the way back to California, right? So those are the people I'm looking for, right? People who are really committed, and I have high hopes with him and two other people actually on the business development side. Does that somewhat answer your question?
Yes, and with that, of course, is the other part of the team, that your people who take care of the back part, if you legal counsel, your HR, and that team that is non-technical, how did you approach those issues, or did you outsource?
Everything else. I tried various things, right? We brought various people into the office who could just help us with almost everything. But no, the real answer is this. So I became part of this EO organization. And in this EO organization, what you get is basically a mentor, and then you have 10 or 8 other people who run the business like me in the beginning, between 250 and 1 million. And then I became a full member of EO, and then you run in a forum with 7 other business owners, and you just present every week. They ask funny questions, right? You have to present your weight. not only like, how is my business doing and all that, no? So how is the marriage, how is the weight, like all these kind of, how are your friends doing? Like 360 degrees. Hey, what is your legal exposure right now? Not only just how much revenue you make and how many projects you finish, like it's a legal exposure increase and how you help with that. So now EO brought us to Novian Partners. I don't want to name others here, but yeah, law firms, right? So we had all kinds of meetings like this at law firms about IP law, about changes in employment law, right? Employment is very, very difficult, right? So you need to make sure that you're fully compliant with everything, right? So workman's comp and all those kind of things, workers' comp, all these things need to be sound, taxes need to be sound. So that's that side. But then the beauty of it is, if you flip that around, if you want to run a business right now, you go to QuickBooks, right? And they set you up with all that and your first couple of employees within a week, right? So yes, so that's not all sound, but you don't need an HR person to take care of making payroll or something like that, or like a CFO in the company. So I basically outsourced all that and took the advice I could get. But again, that's me as an engineer. Lots of us are engineers. Maybe somebody would say that's a mistake, right? So you should take somebody on right away. Long answer.
That's good.
Yeah?
So how do you envision the world with smart contracts and blockchain, ML, AI, RPA? Where do you see the world?
I think that's totally great. I know what you're talking about, but I can't talk to that. So where I see that world, it's probably another talk here. It's not. It's out of my comfort zone to jump into that. But yes, there's this. Now I say the one and do the other, right? But yeah, we went to various talks, looked at various things. Right now, for example, the way how we want to package the leads and send them around, we look at blockchain, right? So we don't need to do that for the leads, right? But we need to do that for the next data we want to send, right? And so let that be our playground in that arena. And if you are the expert, let's go for lunch, right? So that's how that works, right? So and that's what you need to do as you can't know it all, right? You can't do it all right. So you need to find somebody who says, hey, I want to do this. There's Holly Gruber at UCI. She teaches a lot of blockchain. She has a big environment there. So I chatted a little bit with her, and this idea came up. Why don't we use this as a budget again? Or say no and do yes, right? So.
So it's 8:30, this is the end of the formal presentation part of the evening. I'm sure Ralf will stick around and be available to chat, there's some more snacks, but we need to start wrapping things up, and let's thank him once again for